I will go and share my screen. I'll just minimize that. Okay. Are we able to see the slideshow?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Ali, for that amazing introduction. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Mohammed Hussain. I recently moved to Dallas from the Seattle area, and I'm actually going to be relocating to Houston as of next week. But you know, I've loved the time that been here in Dallas. Inshallah, I'll make sure to try to visit as much as I can. But I'm super excited to be helping out with this workshop today. The content that's in this presentation that I'm going to be having is just things that I picked up along my journey throughout college to help me land and get my first internship, as well as not just my first entry level job, but jobs and internships after the first ones I was able to get. Big disclaimer here. I just want to say that everything in this presentation, it's not going to guarantee 100% that you'll get an internship or a job. So I just want to preface that there's a lot of work that you need to put in, but inshallah, you guys all get amazing internships and full-time jobs right out of college, inshallah. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Ali went into a couple, some points of my background. So I graduated from the University of Washington at Seattle in 2019. Right out of college, I worked at Amazon, where I was working on the last mile technologies team as a business analyst for payments and financial data. So if you've seen those Amazon Prime vans that are outside of your neighborhood delivering those packages, basically what I did was I ensured that the people who owned those delivery vans, they were basically contractors that ran their own companies that partnered with Amazon to deliver packages on Amazon's behalf. We ensured that they got paid accurately. And it was a really cool time over there, but I didn't find it as challenging of a role. It was really repetitive and not as technical as I wanted it to be. So I made a transition into solutions architecture, which is a technical sales role. So I work alongside sales reps when they need to bring someone more technical into the conversation. So I did that for about 2 years at Salesforce. And then currently I'm working as a solutions architect for Dropbox, specifically for their e-signature platform, Hussain. In the past, I interned at a company called Smartsheet, as well as Starbucks, both as product managers for their mobile apps. So if you guys have used the Starbucks mobile app, it's amazing. My managers are actually the guys who are the ones that created that whole experience of ordering on your phone and picking up in the store. And then also did an internship at Apple where it was more marketing and kind of sales, where I was a marketing rep for universities in the Seattle area, basically. But outside of the whole industry, I also help a lot of students, particularly Muslim students. I worked with an organization called Mentoring Muslims, where I just help a lot of students one-on-one with various career-related stuff like resume and whatnot. Kind of what I'm going to be talking about here in this presentation. That's basically what I've helped a lot of students with. But the objective, so inshallah, help you find your dream job or internship. Again, not guaranteeing anything over here. And then help you build out your resume as well as a cover letter to help you secure that role. I'm going to go into that in a little bit in the next section, but have a lot to say there as well. And then the next step, it will be to help you network with people who are in the industry, some of the tips and tricks that I've used, and then basically how to navigate through the entire interview process and be successful throughout the process. If you guys have any questions, just put it in the chat, and then I can answer as we go, or we can save it for the end. But yeah. So the first section that we're going to be going over is the resume and the cover letter. This is going to be your first interaction with the company that you're going to be, applying for. I'm going to go into the cover letter first and then go into the resume, just because I like to do cover letters a little bit differently. And I feel like in the world that we're living in now, where most things are virtual and remote, and you're not really interacting with recruiters or hiring managers at college career fairs, sometimes I recommend not to submit a cover letter unless if they 100% require it. And I'm also against actually sending cover letters in like the basic format of it just being like, a couple of paragraphs talking about yourself and whatnot. For anyone that's in college right now, you can put this in the chat. Like, are they doing career fairs in person? Like, I'm not sure how that's all working with like COVID and stuff. But if someone can let me know in the chat, that'd be really helpful, because it kind of plays into how I recommend people do cover letters, where instead of having it be like a sort of a traditional cover letter where you have like to the person, to whomever it may concern, blah blah blah. I like to do it in this format of where I have my name at the top. What do I bring to whatever company it is that I'm applying for? And then I have a couple of these points, right? This is something I made in an application called Sketch. You can definitely use something like Canva. And I think that building something like this in Canva is going to be a lot easier and it won't take as much time. But the reason why I like this is because it's very straightforward, and it can really catch a recruiter or a hiring manager's eye. So really all it is just a couple of points. I have 5 points right here. I'm an efficient communicator, I'm dedicated, I'm curious, flexible, and resourceful. And then I add, some little icons that I got off of the internet. And then I have like 2 paragraphs per each point, right? Like a couple of sentences. And it's just a lot easier to read this versus, reading an entire like cover letter and whatnot. Another thing that I do is per the company, I like to go onto their website and see what their kind of like design languages, what fonts they use, and as well as what their colors are, and then I'll use like a Google Chrome extension. Okay, perfect. That helps a ton, Zinair. With it, some being in person, some online. But yeah, anyways, going back, I like to like figure out what colors. This is actually, you don't have to do this, but I like to see what fonts they're using and what colors that they use, just to kind of show that like, oh, I'm really interested in this company. And I think just even doing something like this, you don't have to always change the colors or the fonts and whatnot. Just doing something like this makes you stand out a little bit more. I remember when I was at a career fair and T-Mobile was there. I gave this to the hiring manager, and they were really impressed that I went above and beyond, and I did something like this because they could tell that I'm interested. Took a little bit more time, and for them it's a lot easier to read this. Again, give this if you're going in person or however what the format is for career fairs. I see brother Muhammad Abbas Versi has raised his hand. If we can get him to unmute, or I think it's important to note that so that's true. Different industries are going to be different when it comes to how they want to see cover letters. Again, I'm in tech, so something like this would definitely fly or go. But if you're in like finance or accounting or something like that, maybe not the best option to use, especially if you're going for something like Goldman Sachs or some investment banking company. If you're doing finance at a tech company, though, I think something like this could pass by. But again, it could depend on the industry that you're going to be going with. But I think this is also really good if you're going to reach out to a hiring manager on LinkedIn for a role. Again, depends on the industry, but sending this alongside your resume can make a really good first impression. But yeah, that's what we got for the cover letter. I'm gonna go ahead and just close out of this, and then we can go to the resume. So the resume, I'd say this is where you want to put most of your time. This is like, the juice or like of the burger. That's a weird way to put it, but the resume, that's your first impression, right? To whatever company that you're going to be sending. When you apply for a job, this is what they look at, right? And to give a little bit more context, I work with a lot of recruiters. I work in kind of like another side job with a company called levels.fyi. We provide transparent salary data for people who are in technical fields, consulting, finance, you name it. And we have a team of around like 30 recruiters from, like companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, a lot of big tech companies in Seattle, Silicon Valley. And I've really used their help to, build out my perfect resume. or at least what I've seen to be deemed to be a perfect resume. The number one thing that they've said is when you have less than 10 years of experience, to keep your resume to one page, right? I've seen a lot of people who are in college, and I even made this mistake too when I was a freshman, sophomore in college, where I went over and I had like 2 or 3 pages, right? But they say, again, this is from like over 30 recruiters. You have less than 10 years of experience, just keep your resume to one page. Another thing that they've said, and again, this may vary on what industry that you're looking to get an internship or a job in, but a lot of them have said that having something like a summary or an objective statement isn't really relevant. And the reason why is because a lot of these companies use something called an ATS, or applicant tracking system. So when you apply for a job, you'll see, it'll redirect you to companyname.greenhouse.io or Workday or SAP or something along those lines. So basically what happens is your resume, when you apply for that job, it goes through that applicant tracking system and it's just looking for keywords. So you could include those keywords in your objective or summary, but again, that can also just take up more real estate on your resume and make you go over, 2 pages, and that could be, or 1 page, and that could be like a bad look. So yeah, going into the resume, I'm just gonna go from top to bottom and kind of explain how I formatted my resume. So I have my name up here, the city that I'm from, my LinkedIn profile, very, very important to include that, phone number, and then your email. I see a lot of people have put their entire address. That's not really relevant, and sometimes maybe not the best thing to do. So just give the closest metropolitan area that you're at. If you're in Carrollton, just put Dallas, or if you want to put Carrollton, up to you. But yeah, just keep it short and simple. You don't need to make it fancy with any colors or anything like that. If you want to, you can. Yeah, again, because it's going through that applicant tracking system. So a lot of the people that will like make it look cool and all that kind of stuff, like sometimes it can actually screw you over in the applicant tracking system because it's just basically using like machine learning and all that kind of stuff just to like skim through your resume, match keywords up. Now for the next part, I have it like split up in a couple of different sections: education, work experience, and skills and interests. You can do this in whatever format you want to. I used, I should have said this earlier, but I use Harvard University's Career Center's resume template. And I think that, you don't have to follow, these sections. You can rename this to education down here, have like work experience up here, and then skills and interests down there. Totally up to you how you want to have it be set up. But for me, I just prefer to have education at the top. And then it's really easy. You can just follow the format. They do all the formatting for you and use these templates. So it's like bolded right here, italicized for the role, or, in this case, the major, the location, the year. I like to keep it short and simple with my university background, just because I like to focus more on the work experience. But for education, I just have the school that I went to, my major, and then I included the specialization that I had. So I studied something called informatics, and I specialized in human computer interaction and data science. Graduated in 2019. GPA, again, this can differ for different industries that you're trying to go into, but in my discipline, I haven't seen the need to include my GPA. If anything, if they ask, I'll send them an unofficial transcript or an official transcript if that's something that they need. But all they just need to see is that you went to university, and then they'll verify that in a background check when they reach out to your university, basically. And then I just include some of the coursework that I did. So I took a couple user experience classes, immersive environments, systems analysis, data science, blah, blah, blah. So the next part that I have here is for work experience. Now, for a lot of the people on here who are in college, it doesn't have to be an internship. If you don't have an internship, any retail jobs that you've had, include those in here. Any research that you do at your university, any side projects, you can just have this be titled experience. It doesn't have to be called work experience. You can really make this what you want. If you've only done projects and you haven't worked, even a retail job, you can rename this to projects or whatever. right? So for work experience, kind of use the same exact format where I'll have the company name here, the location, what my role is, and then the timeline. So I was with Salesforce from January 2020. I need to update this to December of 2021, right? And then I'll have my bullet points per job title, right? Now, with my bullet points, one of the things that I got feedback on from one of the recruiters that I've worked with, who was at Amazon and now she's at Microsoft. One of the things that she pointed out to me when I gave her my resume to review was that I was just putting down like bullet points of like tasks that I did, right, at my internships or my jobs or whatever, right? So I just have something like collaborated with product managers, account executives, solution engineers, all these people to ensure customer satisfaction. Now that's great and all, but the feedback that she gave was you need to be able to quantify that so that the tasks that you've done, you want to show what kind of impact you had with, that company that you were working with. So you don't have to put, like a number or a metric in every single bullet point, but it's good to incorporate that sort of stuff. So for someone that maybe works at a retail job, right? Like I used to work at the Apple store, back when I was in college. So I could have done something like worked alongside customers, in Genius Bar appointments and, increased customer satisfaction by, 95% as measured in an NPS. I could have definitely worded that a lot better. But you want to do something like that, right? So with Salesforce, I contributed 100. I could have just said I contributed, to annual revenue for the company. But here I put like a number, right? I contributed over $100,000 in quarterly revenue by collaborating with product managers, right? So I said here I collaborated with product managers, and then I kind of quantified what impact did me collaborating with product managers have for the business. If you're working in a retail environment, or if you're doing like a side project, try to think of some unique ways that you were able to quantify some of the tasks that you had in those roles, if that makes sense. You don't have to get like super exact. If you don't remember the exact number, it's okay to guesstimate, but don't say anything like absurd and or out of the ordinary, right? So if you did like a side project where you built a website that solved some sort of issue, don't say that like, oh, this website brought in like $400 billion in revenue. Like they're gonna see beyond that. So be reasonable when it comes to that. But yeah, just do that with a couple of different jobs or internships that you've had, by including again just whatever tasks were, and then being able to quantify some of those tasks. The last part that I have here is skills and interests, and I like to break it up into 3 different parts. So I have my technical skills, my customer user experience skills, and then my leadership skills. Again, if you want to, you can just have one section. This is just personally what I like to do. And what I found is that taking the skills part and looking at what the job description says and kind of just glancing through and seeing what skills that they have, I'll put those skills if I have those relevant skills. If I don't have those relevant skills, I'm not going to lie, right? Because if you lie and you're in the interview and they say like, oh, do you know how to code in C++, and I just put C++ in here, it's going to screw me over because I don't know C++. So always be truthful, right? But yeah, so this is just like a really great way for your resume to go through that applicant tracking system that we talked about earlier, and match up with a lot of those keywords. So yeah, this is just like a good spot for you to be able to put the skills that you have and just make sure that they align with what the job description has while being truthful at the same time. Because again, it can really screw you over. But yeah, that's what we got for the resume. I know I did a lot of talking there. If anyone has any questions, again, put them in the chat. I'm more than happy to answer them. But yeah, I'll go back to the slide. And again, I just use a template from Harvard University, their Career Center. If you just Google like Harvard Career Center resume templates, you should be able to find that one and then a couple of others that they have. And then you can just fill in all that information in the template with your information. So the next step is finding the right role, right? So how exactly do you find, the role that you want to do? Let's say you want to become a financial analyst or you want to become a software engineer, right? But a financial analyst at one company or a software engineer at one company could be very different at a different company, right? So always looking at the job site and looking at the job description is really, really important to make sure that it is something that you're interested in, that you want to do. Some of the jobs, a lot of the job sites that I use were LinkedIn, through like the jobs section that they have, but then also through just the search bar, I would just type in like hiring, entry level product managers or business analyst or financial analyst or whatever it is, right? So LinkedIn's really, really good. Indeed is another good job posting site. There are a couple of like student specific ones. When I was in college, it was called Jumpstart. I think now they're called Canvas, not like the Canvas that you use for your classes. It's really confusing, but basically what it is recruiters will actually reach out to you. So it's kind of like reverse LinkedIn, where you create a profile and then recruiters will reach out to you and be like, hey, we're hiring, like for this role at this company. So that's also another really good one. But usually for job posting sites, I just stick with LinkedIn and Indeed, and then whatever my university had. So like we had Handshake. So if your university has something, similar as a career portal, just use that. But that again will only give you like a high level overview. Sometimes if you go onto like the company site, you might get a little bit more insight. But going on YouTube and typing in, like day in the life of a financial analyst, day in the life of a consultant, day in the life of an investment banker, of a software engineer, can give you somewhat of a more realistic view of what it's actually like to be, whatever job position that you want to do. Sometimes people will like romanticize it, or like they'll film a day in the life of them when it's like a company like social event or something like that, so it doesn't actually look like a real day in the life. But watching those like day in the life videos on YouTube or on TikTok can give you a better sense too of, is this a role that I actually want to do? Another way too is like Medium articles or other blog posts. People will talk about like, oh, at 8 a.m. I do this, at 9 p.m. I do this, at 9 a.m. sorry, not 9 p.m. 10 a.m. I do this, 11 a.m. I do this, right? So they give it like a breakdown of their day. And it's just like another good way for you to be able to see like, okay, is this something that I actually want to do? And then lastly, university alumni. So just reaching out to people who, went to your university. Maybe they're already in your LinkedIn network, or, you're not connected with them, but you maybe have some mutuals. If they're doing, a role that you're interested in, just reach out to them, send them an invite, maybe personalize that invite. You can send a note in LinkedIn. Just like, hey, like I see that you're XYZ role at this company. I'm really interested in this role at this company as well, or maybe at a different company. More than I'd love to, kind of pick your brain and learn more about what the role is at that company. So that's also another good thing to do. One thing I want to note about that though is that for some people, you might feel uncomfortable. I remember I definitely felt really uncomfortable in the beginning doing stuff like that, but it helps build out your network, and it can give you really, really good insights. And sometimes you can even get referrals for those roles too. And I'll be talking about that a little bit later on. But another way to find out a good role, again, like I said, reaching out on LinkedIn, Facebook groups. You'll be surprised. There are a lot of Facebook groups that are out there, or even like subreddits, where people will be posting that they're hiring for a specific role. And that's a great way for you to reach out to either the hiring manager or someone who's on that team who's hiring for that role, and kind of get an understanding of what the role is, what the company culture is like, and how that person who put that post out feels about the company and whatnot. But for me, the number one resource that I've used, especially post-college, but you can even find a lot of internships through it, is through Slack workspaces. I don't know like how familiar you guys are with Slack, but it's something that's pretty commonly used in the industry. It's sort of like Discord, but used mainly for professionals. But there are a lot of Slack workspaces that are out there that you can join. And a lot of the times they'll have like a jobs channel where a hiring manager will post a job, or someone from that team will also post a job. And then you can do the same thing where as you would on a Facebook group. You can just reach out to them and then, get a sense of what the company is like, what the role is like, and whatnot. In my recent job hunt from August of last year up until November, when I, alhamdulillah, got my role at Dropbox, of the 30 jobs that I applied to, I want to say like 75% of them I found through Slack workspaces. So one in particular that I'm a part of is called the Pre-Sales Collective, and it's just all technical sales folk. And there's a job posting section there, basically. And if there's a role at a company that I was really interested in, I would just reach out to the person who posted that role. And I'm just like, hey, like I'm interested in this role. Are you guys still hiring? And then usually it would be the hiring manager, and they're like, yeah, here's some information about it. Send me your resume, and I'll put you in the system. And I was able to get so many interviews, alhamdulillah, that way, without even having to go onto like the company website and apply. Sometimes they would tell me to do that, but other times, like I wouldn't have to. And sometimes even, they would be like, hey, let's jump on a Zoom call or Google Hangouts, and that conversation that I would have with them was basically my first round of the interview, for that role. So reaching out directly to hiring managers, whether that's on LinkedIn, on Facebook, through Facebook groups, or Slack, or Discord, or wherever it may be, really, really good way for you to make a first impression. And then sometimes like that'll be your first round of the interview. So really, really good methods that I've used to help me get some offers. So kind of building off of that, when you reach out to those people on LinkedIn, on Slack, Discord, whatever platform that you use, getting a referral from that person can really help, get your foot in the door with whatever company it is that you're applying to, if that's something that they want to do. And don't be afraid to ask referrals. Sometimes you'll get a rejection, right? But other times people are more than happy to give a referral to you, because there is, for most companies, some sort of like financial incentive for them to, refer you for that role. It can vary. I've seen, as low as like $100. And some companies, I remember when I was interning at Smartsheet, they're so desperate for software engineers that they were paying, not even just software engineers, like any role, they were paying $10,000 for you to refer someone at Smartsheet. I think, it's going to vary per company, but like a lot of these employees at these companies, they have a financial incentive to refer someone, because if that person does get hired, they get like a nice bonus, right? One thing I will recommend though is to try to build a relationship with that person, aside from just saying, hey, can you give me a referral, right? Like you want to build a relationship with them, because one, when you reach out to them for a referral, that's your first impression, right? And you want to make a good first impression with them. But then also, it can help you down the line through your career, where, let's say you get that referral, you're hired at the company, they're still with the company, but then they go to a different company, right? And maybe you want to go to that company, right? So you can ask them again for a referral. And since you built that relationship with them, they're going to, of course, be more likely to give you that referral versus you just like asking for that referral, maybe not getting in. And the only way that they know you is like you just like talk to them on LinkedIn about getting a referral, and you didn't really build, some sort of relationship with them. It can also help you in getting a mentor, for whatever field it is that you want to go into. So always, build relationships, because it always helps out with your network. One thing to note though, and I learned this the hard way, was it's not going to guarantee that you're going to get an interview. There are entire websites dedicated for people who are willing to pay to get a referral, right? I think it's called like Rooftop Slushy or something like that. I wouldn't recommend using it just because like there's so many people who are willing to give referrals for free that that it's totally useless. But like, people will use that to get a referral for companies like Google or Facebook, right? And there's so many people that are applying for those positions that sometimes there's so many referrals that are in there, it'll bump your resume or your application on top. But since there are already so many people that are applying for that role, it's not going to guarantee that 100% you're going to get that interview. At a smaller company, you have a much better shot. But at a very large company, like, don't get your hopes up too high. I don't want to sound like a negative Nancy or anything like that, but it's not going to 100% guarantee that you're going to get an interview. So the next section that we're going to talk about is the interview. So you polished up your resume, created that cover letter, you've gone ahead, you found that role, you applied, and alhamdulillah, the recruiters reached out to you and you are gonna move on with the interview process. I'm just gonna stop for water there, but so usually how the interview process works, and again, this varies per company, per role, but usually it's going to start off with the recruiter giving you a call or sending you an email of saying, hey, your application really stood out to us, I'd love to set up like a 30-minute call with you. Recruiter screenings can go one of two ways. One way is the recruiter will just be asking you about what your background is like, and then just giving you a high-level overview what the entire interview process is going to look like. Sometimes they won't, so that's why the first bullet point is there. We should ask them what the interview process is going to look like. But in my experience, especially as of recently, the recruiter will give you an entire outline of what that looks like. And the recruiter call is just basically to kind of like give you that context and for them to get some preliminary information, like, visa status, do you need visa sponsorship? What your salary range looks like, which I'll talk about it in a sec. And things of that nature, right? But yeah, once you find out what the interview process is going to be like, this is when you're going to want to start to do a couple of different things. One, I would say, is to look at what some of the interview questions might look like. There's a website called glassdoor.com where you can see what interview questions look like for specific roles at specific companies and write those down. I have a link right here for the University of Washington. If you just type in on Google, Foster School of Business, 25 sample behavioral questions, maybe your university has it as well, but it goes over the top 25 most commonly asked behavioral questions in an interview. And I'd say just take those questions, take the questions you find off of Glassdoor or Reddit or wherever else you see it on the internet, put it into a Google Doc and just go in question by question and type out what your response would be. That way you go into the interviews a lot more prepared, you're a lot more confident, and you have an idea of what to expect, right? So for behavioral questions, I found that to be super, super helpful. One thing also, use your network. If you know someone who works at whatever company that it is, reach out to them and ask them what the interview process was like for them. I always found that to be really, really helpful. But the number one thing that I 1000% recommend that you do is to do mock interviews. They feel really, really weird. And especially when you're doing it with friends, you're just like laughing and joking around and all that kind of stuff. But mock interviews before you go into like a hiring manager interview or sometimes they do like panel interviews and all that kind of stuff. Mock interviews help me out a ton. I remember when I was looking for full-time jobs in my senior year of college, I would just, I'd look at like Glassdoor and stuff and maybe write down a couple of responses and stuff like that. But I actually didn't practice how I would do the delivery. And doing mock interviews is a really great way for you to practice the delivery on a lot of these questions, right? And I noticed that I was getting a ton of interviews, alhamdulillah, but I was getting a lot of rejections. And the reason why was because I wouldn't do mock interviews. I was basically using the initial interviews that I was getting as kind of like prep and mock interviews so that as I went down, I would get better at answering those questions. But it would have been a lot easier if I would have just practiced. And I noticed that my friends that were getting interviews and also getting offers, they would do mock interviews with each other. So reach out to your friends, anyone in your network, really, to do those mock interviews so that you know how to deliver on those questions that you were able to answer. One thing that I mentioned before that I said I was going to get back to was in the interview process, especially when the recruiter talks to you, one thing that they're going to ask is, what is your expected salary range? So I found that I've shot myself in the foot a couple of times by giving them like a hard number or giving them a range, so that when it came for the offer, I know I'm kind of jumping a little bit ahead here, but this is really, really important. When they gave the offer, right, it wasn't a very competitive offer just because, one, I didn't really know what my worth was. And then two, when it came to like doing salary negotiation and all that kind of stuff, it could only go up so high. So I found that when I go through that process of salary negotiation, especially in the first round where the recruiter asks what a salary range is, I ask them when they ask me, what do you think is a good salary range for you? I usually just ask them, what's the typical salary range for this role? Or like, what do you guys have budgeted for this role? And then 9 out of 10 times they'll give a number. If they're pushing and asking you like, hey, what's like a good number for you? Just say like, I haven't really put too much thought into it. And I'd like to, kind of get a feel of the company culture, go through the entire recruiting process. And I think I come up with a better number, but to be honest, I won't be able to give you a number at this time. But usually for internships and entry level jobs, there isn't too much to play around with when it comes to like the base salary that they're going to give you. Maybe with stocks and bonuses, you can negotiate that. But usually when you're more experienced, it's easier to actually go in and negotiate your base salary. But it never hurts to try to ask the recruiter what the salary range is, and then after you go through the entire interview process, give them an exact number. One resource that I wanted to share with you guys is this website called levels.fyi. It's mainly for people who are in like tech, so software engineer, UX design, product manager. They do have a couple of data points for like sales and finance and other types of engineering roles. But basically, it's like Glassdoor, but instead of you seeing like ranges for salaries on Glassdoor, this goes in like data points and whatnot. So for example, like a new grad at Microsoft, right? You can see like what are some of the more recent data points for salaries are, and it's broken up by base salary, how many stocks they get per year quantified in dollars, and then a bonus. So you can see here in Austin, Texas, a new grad at Microsoft has a base salary of $95,000, 30K in stocks per year. So that means that they got a grant of $120,000 of stock over 4 years. That comes out to be 30K per year. And then a 10K bonus, sometimes signing bonuses also included in there. And then there's also a really cool like end of the year report. So you can see like which companies were paying the most. So like a new grad software engineer at 2 Sigma, which is a quantitative, they do, it's like a quant firm, really hard to explain. If anyone knows exactly what they do, just like put it in the chat because I can't really explain it. But you can see here, $250,000. And then you're like, what does that actually entail? That will entail like stock and bonus and all that kind of stuff. So this is a really good website for you to be able to see, again, if you're like in a tech role specifically, this is a really good website for you to go to and refer to see what your worth is, so that when a recruiter asks you, what's your expected salary, you can refer to some of the data points in here and be like, oh, like you can refer to the data here. But again, don't give a number up front, have them give a number, and then you can kind of get an idea of, okay, is this something that I actually, want to be paid and whatnot. But yeah, so this is the website, levels.fyi. Glassdoor is another good one, but if you want to see like more concrete data, kind of more like, data point by data point, levels.fyi is a pretty solid option for that. But yeah, with that, I think that is all that I have. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen there, but I know I went through a lot. If anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them, but yeah.
Thank you so much, Mohammed Hussain. That was really informative. I personally learned a lot from that. I'm pretty sure everybody who's in the room right now learned a lot from this as well. Thank you so much for taking time out and building out those resources and building out those slides. Maybe I just wanted to remind everybody, this is being recorded, so we're going to re-upload this session entirely to our YouTube channel, so you can go back and look at the things you missed or things you need a refresher on. And then Mohammed Hussain, maybe if you could upload your slide deck to Google Drive or something like that, or just send it to me, I can upload it on our Google Drive, and we can just link that in the YouTube description so that people can have the slides to look at when it comes to the cover letter, the resume, and the other resources that you provided.
Yeah, I'll make sure to do that.
Awesome.
Just
before we wrap up, I wanted to ask if there's any questions anybody had in the room to go ahead and ask Mohammed Hussain right now, since they have the opportunity to. Okay, I don't think there's any questions. Mohammed Hussain has went ahead and added some stuff in the chat. He will go ahead and send me the Google Sheets, and then I'll go ahead and upload that to the YouTube video. Just give us a day, and it'll be on our YouTube channel on Dallas Youth as well. And we'll also go ahead and post the video link in our announcements chat and our social media. And so if you are connected to that, then you will be able to find the link to these resources as well. Okay, thank you so much, Mohammed Hussain. I appreciate everything. Thank you, everybody else. Thank you, everybody, for joining our session today. And inshallah, we'll see everybody next time. Thank you again so much, Mohammed Hussain.